welcome as you're coming in here. Really excited to be diving in. We're going to dive into a bit more of the data side of building an effective go-to-market strategy. And yeah, I've got a lot prepared here. I'll be totally honest. I am pulling some content from some really great minds in the world of marketing. So these are not all of my own original thoughts, and that's okay. I think part of my job here as walking through some of this is to pull some kind of meld together the great content that is out there. So hope you guys enjoy it. Ashley, on your side of things, do you feel like we're good to start going through this, or do you want to keep on waiting for another minute or two?
Nope, we're good to get started. If anyone has questions, you're welcome to use the Q&A or the chat. And if it's relevant, we'll go through them during the presentation. Otherwise, we will get to them at the end, and we kind of have like a open dialogue at the end for everyone to ask their questions and give feedback and comments too.
Great. Thanks so much, Ashley. All right, let's dive in. So if you were here last week, you will recall some of these similar introductions, but I tend to have a different spin to it every time I go through it, and I go through it several times a day for folks on what we do. We'll share a little more on that, and then we'll talk about go-to-market planning, how we do lead reactivation, some really interesting tips that we learned from SaaStr Europa, which took place last week. Big plus if you were there. Might have met some of our team. Then we'll talk about some net new targets, and then really how you can optimize your go-to-market data. And of course, if you have any questions, we'll make space for that. So a little bit about me. This is my wife and my son, Sydney and Henry, respectively. We live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We're relatively new to the Northeast. We're kind of Southerners, honestly. My wife and I met back in college down in Troy University in Alabama. And then Henry came along much later. He was not a twinkle in my eye when we met, but really has been fun being parents. And if he wakes up from his nap on this conversation, you just might hear from him. We'll see. And of course, if you'd like to reach out, here's my contact information. So here's what the typical lead generation process looks like for most companies. And if you're familiar with the parable of Sisyphus's boulder, it feels a lot like pushing a rock up a hill, and the rock keeps coming back down on you. And you keep trying to push it up the hill, and it comes back on you over and over and over again. It's not fun. And that's what a lot of teams put up with, right? All for the sake of gaining new clients, right? And it's a worthy endeavor, but it's just, they make it really hard. And it kind of looks like this. Step one, individual prospect research, trying to figure out who we're going to go after, then manually send them an email, manually inviting them for coffee, making a single phone call, single LinkedIn message. You don't hear back. Unqualified follow-up. Hey, did you get my last email? Any updates? Did you see this? Don't know if you missed this. All of this results in poor conversion rates, and it really is pushing that boulder up the hill. And it's just not fun. But we found a way to make this a lot easier for ourselves and for our clients, and look something a bit more like this. A really streamlined go-to-market strategy where you know exactly who you're going after. You get all your lists together at one time, right? All your messaging at one time. And then you plug that into automated outreach and whatever platform you want to use, whether it's something that we run or one you get yourself. I mean, you can use plenty of platforms out there to run automated outreach, but you should definitely get one, right? And use this kind of process if you're not already. And then have a method to begin scoring your leads and tracking who's showing the most interest mid-cycle. Who do I follow up with? Who's responding? Who's not? How am I doing overall? Where do I need to tweak maybe the CTA, the value props, the introduction, the subject line? These are all things that we do for our clients. But enabling that targeted follow through allows for even higher conversion rates. And at the end of the day, happier customers and more revenue, right? And if you're a salesperson, it typically means more money in your pocket, right? And we all love that. So wanted to find some terms. We did this last week. If you're new here, I use some terms that may or may not make sense to you. And even if they do make sense to you, you may have a different way that you define them. So let's go over this really fast. So number one, A prospect is someone who is someone that you want to talk to, but they are not engaging with you quite yet, right? So they're definitely in your target audience. You're going after them, no response yet. A lead has two types. There's an market qualified lead, an MQL, or a sales qualified lead, an SQL. And so if you think of the life cycle of a customer throughout your journey, it's going to start with prospect, and then they'll move over to an MQL where they're showing interest. They maybe have filled out a form. They have shown signals of interest, but they're not talking to you yet. And then you have a sales qualified lead, which is they are engaging with a salesperson. Maybe they have talked with you on the phone. Maybe you have a conversation scheduled. That's an SQL, right? So the differences. And then email automation, just a platform to be able to launch automated outreach, right? And typically you should be able to engage a couple hundred or a couple thousand prospects at one time. And more on that later as well. Your total addressable market. Sorry, the dog is waiting outside the door. You may see him jump up here in a second. There he is. So we're going to talk more on deciding or uncovering what your total addressable market is in this conversation today, and then really how to leverage that data in terms of lead scoring, right? If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A for this. Be happy to pause at any time if I went a little too fast on what we do or any of these terms. But moving on. So we're going to hang out on this slide for a minute. Now, full transparency, these are not my original thoughts. I read a phenomenal book last year called Obviously Awesome by April Dunford. I'll send you a link after this if you're really curious to read the book. But I loved it so much, I had a copy sent to the entire team. This was like summer reading list for our team last year. And it was phenomenal, right? So we're helping all of our clients kind of map out their go-to-market strategy, right? All 5 of these components are going to be crucial. Thanks for posting that, Ashley. All 5 of these components are going to be crucial in uncovering that, right? So we'll go ahead and dive in, right? Number 1 is diving into competitive alternatives, right? So if your client did not use you, who would they be using, right? And these could be things like doing something manually, using a spreadsheet, or if you can figure out what those competitive alternatives are, those kind of will give you an idea of where there's room in the market and where you're beating out the competition, right? And when you can understand that, then you kind of can gather into like, okay, what are my unique attributes? What do I have that no one else has, right? So for example, I'll give you something just really simple here. Was meeting with we're trying to uncover like more conversational intelligence to use for our own team. And a lot of them, they're the products out there. There's quite a few, but they're great, right? They record your call. There's AI. They show you the transcript. They give you a summary, and you can use that in your own notes. I met with one this past week. They not only did that, but they help you track your pipeline and understand where deals are stalling. That's a very unique attribute that no one else seems to be doing at that similar price point. So that is a huge value add, right? And then when you look into the actual value or proof, these are where we hang our hat for our customers, right? And what I mean by that is we use something called outcomes-based messaging. And the story I love to tell with this is has to do with a product I bought recently. So if you're familiar with the brand Solo Stove, they're really cool bonfire pits, but like on their face, like they are a bonfire pit. And you put wood in them and you light it on fire, and maybe you have marshmallows, right? But the idea is like roughly the same. It's a bonfire. Why is it so cool? Why is the Solo Stove still so fun? Well, it's smokeless. Well, okay. If you've ever been at a bonfire and you've gotten smoke in your face, you know how much that sucks, right? That's interesting, but that's just like a unique attribute, right? That's just part of the puzzle. What the real value is for a bonfire like that, the reason I bought one had nothing to do with that. I bought a bonfire because I wanted to be able to have marshmallows with my family or beers with my friends That's what it enables. That's the true value there. So when you talk about outcomes-based messaging or the real value, what does the thing you provide actually enable for your customers, right? So say you are a cybersecurity shop. It's not all the suite of technology and whatnot. It's the fact that you're safe from malicious activity. You are going to sleep better at night because you work with us. Like those are the actual outcomes that you're creating, right? And then you want to think through like, okay, who are the most ideal buyers here, right? Who are going to sign up and say, yes, I love this immediately. And then who is similar to that, right? And so if you're saying to yourself right now in terms of your target buyers, well, we can work with everyone, I will gently encourage you, that is probably a red flag. Just because you can work with everyone does not necessarily mean that you should as you're starting out or as you're tackling a go-to-market strategy. You're probably going to want to segment those out and have very different messaging to each group because they all care about very different things. So your targets need to be really narrow and specific. The more narrow they are, the more you can add along the way. And one thing that's I find interesting is when you say, when you're going into market category here, when you say we are X, people are going to instantly start comparing you to others in that particular category. So a question I get asked a lot on our calls are like, for full transparency, NerdWise is not a CRM. We don't try to be a CRM. It's not what we do. But I get asked oftentimes, are you a CRM? This feels like a CRM. And people are immediately attaching what I'm telling them to Salesforce, HubSpot, and on and on and on down the list. And when I get compared to those, or when we get compared to those, it doesn't look so good because where are all these other features? How am I supposed to, do this and that? And it's like, well, we were never trying to, right? We're trying to do this instead. Let me tell you about this other category. So when you compare yourself to others, it creates a really strong sticking point or an anchor in someone's mind. And that market category, taking time to really define what that's going to be, will really provide a lot more clarity to your customers, even if it is subconscious, right? And just kind of sum all this up. I know this may seem like a lot to think through. I know I spent maybe 3 or 4 minutes on this, but I've more or less glazed over this, right? If this seems complicated, if this seems like I really need a lot more thoughts on this, number one, it is worth the thought experiment. It is worth actually diving in each of these areas, try and uncover like really what are the answers to these questions. And I can try and help with those things, of course, but we also did put together a guide that I'd be happy to send to any of you or all of you, if you'd like, where it kind of walks you through how to uncover each of these things. And so we give this as a guide to all of our new customers when they come on board with us. But if you would like a copy of that so you can kind of work through this yourself, just go ahead and respond yes in the chat. I'll make sure to send one over to you as soon as we're done here today. So if you want that guide, just let us know. I got you. From there, want to give you just a quick plug. So we are going through a 6-week series of these webinars. We're only on week 2 here. We're going to talk more about messaging, sourcing high quality prospect lists, how to really dive in on lead scoring, and then really what we're using for lead handling to optimize that approach internally so that your leads are not going to waste, right? So from here, I'm so sorry. We're going to talk about lead reactivation. So this is a commonly used idea in the world of marketing or in social media marketing, right? To continually re-engage those that are showing interest, right? And so here's kind of how we do this to really leverage your existing brand. As you're establishing yourself, people get to realize who you are as a brand. They're going to become more open to actually working together. There's something called I'm going to butcher this. It's one of these. It's either the halo effect or the availability bias. I'll double check it and get back to you on this. But basically, what you are more familiar with, you are much more likely to purchase, right? And so lead reactivation is really key here to make sure you're staying in front of people. So I'm going to walk you through how to do some of this. So number one, as you're doing your outbound outreach, you want to track who's showing interest, right? Certain tools are better for this than others. Certain channels are better for this than others. So for example, in email, you can see who's opening, who's clicking links, who's forwarding to colleagues. LinkedIn, not as useful. I love LinkedIn, but you can't always track engagement there. With social media, you can track engagement based off of particular audiences and so forth. Phone calls, you can track some of that as well, or text messages if someone has like a read receipt, that kind of thing. But you want to be able to track that and be able to compile that in a dashboard over time so that you can begin retargeting those. So that's primary reason why we love doing email outreach, is because it enables us to do retargeting within those MQLs, right? That may have been unclear. Let me know if you have questions there. And then one thing we love to do is kind of mid-channel, sorry, I'm reading too fast. Multi-channel engagement mid-cycle, right? So let's say I have a 6-point outreach sequence that I'm running by email. And then I want to actually understand who's showing interest within that. And that's going to last for, say, 4 weeks, right? I'm making this up. If I'm sending out all these emails over this time frame to, let's say, 500 or 600 people, I want to be able to know who's showing interest right away, and the lead scoring tool will help you do that. And then as that campaign is going out, hey, want to introduce myself, saw you're interested in X, would love to know if we can grab coffee, whatever you're using your campaign. Connect with them on LinkedIn in the middle of that. So now they're going to see your name in their inbox. They're going to see you on their LinkedIn if your audience uses LinkedIn, or maybe it's Facebook or Instagram. Maybe you're, trying to gather influencers as a client base. So LinkedIn would make a lot more sense, right? Maybe they see a missed phone call from you. I think those two alone really useful because it just shows a level of intentionality of, I'm not just in a campaign. This person actually wants to talk to me. They are very serious, and most people's time is really important to them. Like, they're selfish with their time, as they likely should be, right? But when you're showing intentionality, that goes a long way with most audiences, right? Sure, there are ways that you can be annoying and are really aggressive with that. But I think if you're gentle and kind and not engaging too often, but frequently enough in that sequence, people are going to actually say, like, okay, sure, you want to talk? I can give you 10 minutes, right? And that allows you to begin building a relationship, right? Another thing too, pro tip on like LinkedIn, from what I typically see our clients do and what I do myself, is connect on mid-cycle, and then don't send a note. Or if I do send a note, it's just a very like, hey, loved your content, really appreciate the opportunity to follow you more. Would love to talk sometime if you're open. I may even not even include that last part. I may send that a couple of days later. The alternative is the kind of stuff that I get in my inbox frequently, which is, hey, we create X, Y, and Z. Would love to know if you're interested, or if you ever have a need for this, go ahead and give me a call. And it's like, you don't know if I need that at all. You don't know what I do, right? So focus on relationship building there. And then bonus points are voice texts and maybe a vidyard. These are hyper personalized. And I think why people love these so much is you can't mass produce them, right? So to your top engaged individuals, or say you're going for like strategic or enterprise accounts, these really go a long way because they know you had to create this for them one time and can't use it again. So letting them also hear your voice, seeing your face if it's a vidyard, I think also goes a long way as well. Now, one thing that our team learned from Sastra Europa was the idea of bofu versus tofu. And I'm going to assume that most of you have no idea what I mean here. If you do, big brownie points to you. So I didn't know what this meant either, for the record. So no shame here. It means bottom of funnel or top of funnel. So the majority of what I've been talking about here has like largely been around top of funnel outreach, getting new people into the fold. Well, there's also bottom of funnel outreach. And I think lead reactivation is part of that. So when you have MQLs or existing customers, how can you retarget to those and engage them in such a way that's like you're continuing to create new value, provide new things. So for example, like sending out a newsletter or having a regular cadence or maybe even a webinar, right? Where you're creating additional content for them, middle of the funnel, right? Or bottom of the funnel, so that they're seeing all the value that you're creating. And they're like, okay, clearly this is a trustworthy brand. These are trustworthy people. They know their stuff. Now I am ready to talk to them, right? But if you have MQLs, you can leverage them that way. If you don't have MQLs, if you're not tracking that over time, you can't continually re-engage them, right? So that's going to be really critical here. And that's kind of also what I mean by engaging existing interesting parties. The alternative of that also is like, what value can you create for your existing customers to ask for partner relationships or referrals? And all of these create more happy clients, right? Improve that customer acquisition. On from here. So we've talked a lot about defining your total addressable market, your go-to-market plan, how to re-engage existing contacts. But I think one thing that's often tough in this is like really defining who your target audience is. And I want to hang out on that for a second. And so this is really helpful. Whenever we bring on a new client, we're going to walk through this diagram, right? So it's really helpful to figure out first, ask yourself, like, not only who are your target clients, who are your happiest clients? If you have them already, who loves you, raves about you, recommends you to others? That is a key indicator on who you should continue to go after next. That seems like a dumb axe, but you'd be surprised how many people miss that, right? And then the next year is like, where are you getting the most traction? Maybe you've got a little bit of inbound or outbound happening. Where are you getting the most engagement or interest from those people? And how can you find more of them, right? So that will be big indicators that will define the industries, company sizes, job titles, and so forth. I did a really interesting exercise. So NerdWise is like relatively industry agnostic. We can work with just about anyone, right? But I was curious, like, I feel like we've got a lot of clients in Texas. I feel like we've got a lot of clients in the Northeast. I wonder why that is, right? And I began diving into the data of our existing clients, and it was kind of able to uncover, like, we seem to have more traction in Texas, in California, PA, and New York. That seems to be where we're getting a lot more customers. Maybe we should continue to retarget in those areas before we expand to, say, the Midwest or internationally. Not that we can't work with those people, but we're seeing a lot of traction there. Maybe there are some network effects that we're able to leverage. So that's just an example. And then from there, let's go back up to the top, right? So that was just a tidbit on locations. If we go up to industries, one thing that is interesting to think through is like, oh, we only work with, I'm going to make this up. We only work with CPAs. Let's say that's kind of the, say you're a social media company and you only work with CPAs, or that's kind of who you've historically worked with. Well, what industries are going to be similar to CPAs? What other white collar, professional, in office types of industries can you go after? Well, that might unlock law firms. It might unlock niche like tax advisories. It might unlock private equity and investment banks and VCs. I mean, they're kind of in that finance world. It might also open up wealth management advisors. And so without doing a whole lot of extra work, you can kind of adjust your pitch. You can adjust your value prop to say, like, so say you transition to law firms. We work with a lot of people in professional services. Or say you want to work over to VCs and PE and wealth advisors. We crush it for the financial services industry. Would love to get to know you, right? So that's how you kind of expand into tangential and similar industries. Company size is also going to be really important to know. An SMB or a mid-market company is going to behave completely differently than an SMP or an enterprise group, right? Understanding that before you start going to market is going to be critical, right? And I can kind of, the guide that I plugged earlier will kind of walk you through some of those buying behaviors, but it also helps you determine the job titles you go after. So if it has less than 100 employees, maybe less than 500, going after the CEO makes a lot of sense. Same for the rest of the C-suite. But the titles you go after for a 20-person company, probably going to be a lot different versus 1,000 or 2,000. Once you start getting bigger, there's going to be others in the C-suite. There's going to be SVPs and EVPs and plain old VPs and directors and managers with budgets to make buying decisions. And so knowing that in advance is going to be really helpful as you build out a target audience list. That will help you actually not only expand, but be really targeted, right? So if for example, we have worked with companies between 20 to 100 employees. Our common buyer is a CEO, a COO, and a CRO. That's who we'll continue to go after. And you decide to go up market, you want to make more money and sell larger contracts. So you go to 500 to 1,000 and 1,000 to 2,000 employee companies. And you say, well, we worked with CEOs, COOs, and CROs. Let's do it again. Your campaign may be a total flop, right? Because they're getting bombarded by people and they're too busy to engage at this early in the buying cycle. You might need to find a champion or an influencer lower down in the chain of command that once you're having a conversation with them, they say, yes, this is great. Let me bring in the economic buyer who is the CEO, COO, CRO, et cetera. Get them to sign off on this and then take you back through procurement, contract negotiation. I mean, it's just a different style. Knowing that in advance is going to help you have a much more effective campaign, right? So that's kind of how we walk through building net new targets. And yeah, if you have questions, you may ask. And then from here, ultimately using data to optimize your go-to-market strategy, right? So obviously, NerdWise's application can help you optimize this by tracking the data around which campaigns are performing the best. Optimizing it is really fun to do. It's an interesting challenge and so forth. But the interesting thing with that is you need to understand what you're optimizing for. So am I optimizing for campaign engagement, happy customers, faster deals, larger deals? Do I want more people respond but not close as often? These are really important things to understand. So I'm going to take a drink of water and walk you through this. So number one, you may get a particular audience that is opening your campaigns and not really responding. That's probably going to be indicative of you've got great subject lines, maybe a good preview, but the actual call to action or value you're adding in copywriting is probably not enough to get the positive response that you want, right? One that I love is like, who are our happiest customers? Who are getting the best results from us and continue to renew every single year? We probably should find more people like that. What are their attributes? Where are they located? What's their company size? Are they paying at a price point that maybe is appropriate for that size and would be different for another size? Like those are things that are really important to understand and help you optimize that. And then our NerdWise app does not help you with this, but you can track this over time. Just full transparency on that. Don't want to promise for what we can and cannot do. But deal cycle versus revenue size. So there's like general whispers in the market today of deals are moving a little bit more slowly. You're going to want to know how much more slowly. What's the time to close? What's like the actual deal cycle? And then what's more important to you? So what are we optimizing for? Do we want larger contracts, but less of them? Or do we want just more happy customers? Maybe we don't care about if we can add their logo to our reel or our website, but maybe we're just going to get more and more happy customers, right? Kind of figuring that out is also actually before the smaller companies typically will close faster than the enterprise customers. So even though you want more money from that deal, say it's an enterprise or larger, more strategic account versus a net new, like smaller company, you have to be okay with the fact that it's going to take longer. Are you, right? So understanding those where you can have leeway where you can is really important. Maybe you just need more cash in the bank, more cash flow. So you're going to want more, SMB type companies, right? So that's going to be important to note. And then finally, response rate versus close rate, right? So perhaps you have realized, I want to go down market. I want to get more deals. I want to pump up the pipeline. I want to just start having more and more conversations, but the deals don't close. That's really not helpful at the end of the day, is it? Right? Perhaps you might need to be going to a larger contract or a larger company size. They respond a little bit less often, but their close rate is 50 to, I don't know, 200% greater. It is really key to understand and tracking your data over time so that you can price appropriately and so that you can actually optimize your campaigns for where you're going to get the best results for this current stage in your business, right? Understanding all of these things and having the capabilities to track them is going to be critical, right? So I'm trying to think if there are other aspects here that I want to make sure I cover. Nope, that's it. Those are the ones. So I'll move on from here. Yeah, and that's kind of the wrapping up of the major content here. So we're going to begin dialing this down. Last week's webinar lasted 37 minutes. We're currently at the 33-minute mark, so we might keep it exactly the same. But you might be asking at this point, and probably more so this week than last week if you were here last time, okay, this seems really complicated and very time consuming. I probably need some help. And how do I know if I'm getting it right? Or maybe just jumping to like, I got to get someone else in here to do this. Or maybe I can get that intern to run social media for me, like that idea, right? How can I get a junior member of my team? And any of these questions that you might be asking, we'd be happy to follow up and engage with you on this. Again, the doc I was talking about earlier, if I can help walk through some of that, let me know. I definitely want to be as helpful as possible. I'm happy to set aside 30 minutes or so. If you want to walk through that doc and some work that you've created, I would be more than happy to review it and see if I can provide any pointers. I know the rest of our team would be happy to do so as well. And so with that in mind, you can drop your email in the chat. We'll send you a quick follow-up as well. But yeah, let us know if you're interested in this. And then this magic mouse I have is great, but it always does this. I'm so sorry. And that's really it. So I'll stop here. Are there any questions that I can answer from the group that would be really, really useful to make sure we cover before we wrap up here? If you don't have any questions or you don't feel like others are going to ask something that's going to be useful to you, you're welcome to hop out here. But typically the questions we get are interesting. So I'll pause here. Any thoughts or questions from our audience? While folks might be typing, Ashley, any thoughts on your side of things? Anything that you want to make sure we add or cover here?
No, I don't think so. Great job.
Thank you very much. Well, folks, if there are no other questions, we can go ahead and wrap up. This was great. Thanks so much for joining us again. Or if you're new, welcome to the party. Otherwise, yeah, we'll hope to see you next week, same time next week, next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be here again. We're going to dive into creating more effective messaging. And so, yeah, really looking forward to that. Otherwise, guys, this has been a pleasure. We will talk to you all very soon. Thanks so much. Have a good one.